Hope you're having a great weekend out there. We want to thank you so much for joining us, spending part of that weekend right here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, the financial advisors, and the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about Ralph, Tim, the entire team over there on the website, welcomehomefp.com, or give a call, 804-635-3550. 3 offices in the Richmond location. They are independent. They are local. Very important. But that number will get you where you need to go. Again, 804-635-3550. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined, as I am, always, with the father-son team, Ralph and Tim. It's good to see you guys again. How you doing?
Doing good. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I don't have a dog in the fight this one, but still gonna tune in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. Tim, I know you also don't. I'm not gonna kick you while you're down, but yes,
please don't.
Yeah, well, to say,
easy.
Yeah, happy Super Bowl Sunday to everyone out there. The weather lately has been kind of crazy, and this isn't a show talking about the weather, but it is something that's unexpected. It's a reminder it's not always going to be 65 or 70 degrees. Occasionally you're going to get a couple inches of snow or no snow and just ice. It's unexpected. One of the things that can throw a retirement budget into chaos is also the unexpected event. The Center for Retirement Research says whatever your annual budget is, you should set aside about 10% of it for those unexpected expenses. So what have you guys seen as the most common events that if people don't take into account, it can derail a retirement budget?
Well, you're definitely speaking to the listeners after the last couple of weeks we've had with weather. I mean, we've gone from, possibility of a foot to 2 feet of snow to 3 inches of ice to, hey, it's going to snow next weekend, and now nothing happens. Yes, and I think it's to be expected of the unexpected. So, when it comes down to retirement, there's a lot of folks nowadays that kind of have a lack of liquidity, if you will, where they're going to tie up investments or assets for a certain amount of time. And, one of the biggest unexpected things that we see comes down to health and long-term care on that side. And we know that medical's pretty expensive, right? So we want to make sure that we've got things put into place. And I don't know if there's a magical number as far as what you need for liquidity, but you got to know what your money's doing and making sure that you've got, access to a good portion of that, because things are going to pop up, but it's not always, the unexpected bad things, but it's also the unexpected good things. What if your lovely children call you up and say, hey, we want to go take a cruise or we want to go on this trip? Well, if you've got your money tied up somewhere, or you got to look at it this way too, is not necessarily having your money tied up, but let's take a look at, like what precious metals and gold and silver have been doing as of late. If your money's going down, what do you not want to do? Probably don't want to touch it, right? Yeah. You don't want to sell it at that low point. So I think that's also a lack of liquidity that people often overlook of, okay, hey, well, if my money's not doing well, I'm probably going to have to leave this alone. So, I think it's very important that people understand how, all their assets, all of their dollars are working together and making sure that we're going to have things set aside for that unexpected.
I would say for most people, things are still going to cost you money in retirement. Your expenses do not stop. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I would say to a lot of people is we always want to help our grandkids or families that get into a situation they might need some help. And that's great that you can do that, but you have to understand you need to take care of yourself first. And those gifts or emergencies can quickly add up that all of a sudden that you've taken out money out of your retirement accounts, and then you're going to have to pay a lot more on taxes than you expected because it wasn't planned. You need to have a plan. And the other thing is we don't know what inflation is going to do. It's been fairly quiet right now, but a few years ago it was not. So how's that going to affect you in your retirement years? You're probably going to have more expenses than you planned for. Those are just things that you kind of have to be prepared for. And I think the solution is very simple. You just need to plan for any surprise for any purpose. You just kind of be like a Boy Scout. Just keep a cash cushion, be prepared, kind of build some flexibility in where your money is. You need some that's going to be very liquid. Some of it's going to be for long-term growth because like Tim says, if it started going down, you don't want to take money out of that at that point in time, but you need to still be able to pay your bills, do the things that you want to do. And you just kind of have to build that flexibility, like I was saying, into your retirement plan. And you don't need to invest every dollar you have in the market because we don't know what's going to happen. When it's going up, everybody's happy, but everybody panics when it starts going down because there's one thing I can guarantee you. The market's going to go up and the market's going to go down. We just don't know which way it's going to go. So if you're 20 years old, you don't need to worry about it. But if you're retirement years or just about to retire, you got to be very careful how you start taking money out. Peace of mind is really coming from, like I said, being a Boy Scout. Be prepared for whatever life throws at you, because it's not just an easy trend going straight up. We always have bumps in the road. In our lifetime, at least in my lifetime, Chris, I know you haven't been around as long as I have, but you probably had some bumps in the roads along the way. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, no, absolutely. And it has been a good while since I've been able to be a Boy Scout, but that motto, be prepared, has stuck with me. Here's the thing, expect the unexpected. It is going to happen. Life happens. And when life happens, it is rarely inexpensive. It's going to cost some money. Making sure that you're not taking it from places that aren't, easily accessible. You have to wait, weeks or months before you can actually access that money. Make sure you're not paying more in taxes than necessary. Making sure you're not withdrawing from a down market. That is what proper planning is all about. That is what that retirement roadmap that you guys do is all about. I want to go back to something that you said, Tim, those unexpected events, and you mentioned long-term care. As the probability of long-term care has gone up significantly, it's now more of a possibility or a probability than a possibility.
Sure.
Is that something that you can still consider unexpected or just unplanned for at this point?
Well, I think either way. I mean, it doesn't matter what you want to classify it as. You got to make sure that you're going to have, that plan for it. I had this discussion last week about the same topic, and they had this was, kind of a real life scenario where, they were dealing with an aging mother, and it drug on for quite some time when the doctors didn't think she was going to make it past 6 months. And it took a toll on the family, not just, financially, but also mentally too. So those are things that you really got to pay attention to. And, the cost of healthcare, the cost of medical expenses, they're not going to go down. Right. So I think, depending on what studies you look at, you're probably 70 to 80% of folks are going to need some sort of level of care once they get to a certain point in their life as far as age is concerned. Well, we want to make sure that we've got a plan for that. And I think that's really important, because there's a lot of people now, and I know we've talked about it in the past, where, hey, if I've got 1.5 or 1.8 million or whatever it is, I'm going to be okay. Well, that's not necessarily true, because once again, if you're in a nursing home for a couple of years, that could erode that pretty quickly.
I would say to a lot of people out there is that, what we think is the cost of an item 5 to 10 years from now is not going to be what it is today. Think about replacement of a car, replacement of a home. If you have to sell your home, you get a good profit out of it. But guess what? You might downsize your living space, but it's probably going to cost you about the same amount of money that you're going to get for your house these days. So, think about it from the standpoint of buying a car. I had talked to a couple that was in their 80s the other week, and she came in and said, I think about buying a new car, and I think I want to buy a Vet. And I just kind of looked at her like, are you serious?
There we go.
She goes, yeah. And all of a sudden I said, well, have you priced them lately? I said, they are costing probably more than what my first house cost me back in the 70s. So you need to be aware that things will go up. And if you're used to a $30,000 vehicle, and now all of a sudden it's gone up to close to 100, that's going to be quite a shock, and you're probably not prepared for it.
I can't remember the name of the show I was watching this weekend, but it's a show on Apple TV about NASA astronauts and, during the space race in the 60s. And every single one of the astronauts, it was funny, had a Stingray in their driveway, had a Corvette, and I couldn't help but think, I was like, man, one Corvette now would probably buy all the houses in that block, just because inflation is what it is. But you want to account for these things that we don't really have answers for, but just knowing that they are going to happen, and there will be these unexpected things, these curveballs. That is what the retirement roadmap is all about. Occasionally on the road through life, we get a little off course. How do you get back on track? Well, if you have a roadmap in play, it's an easy way to find out. So setting up that roadmap as part of your overall retirement process is as simple as scheduling a time to speak with Ralph Short, with Tim Short, the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. Give a call, 804-635-3550, or you can go online to the website, welcomehomefp.com. Now, here's a fun fact. Ralph Short loves his memes, always sending me Instagram reels and things of that nature. But meme stocks is something different. It's a stock that suddenly surges in popularity and trading volume driven almost entirely by social media buzz. You might remember GameStop, AMC. In the past year, there's been like GoPro, Krispy Kreme, Kohl's. I'm all about Krispy Kreme, but that's a whole other thing. But what's a meme mean now? Josh Schaefer is an editor over at Barron's, and here's what he said.
It's prediction markets, right? If it was stocks, if it was cryptocurrency, then maybe it was sports gambling. Now it's you can bet on anything, right? And you've seen prediction markets really start to take off. And it sort of has the same vibe to me as meme stocks. It's the thing that you hear when you go out on the street. Instead of people talking about GameStop or talking about AMC, you're hearing them talk about being able to bet on the weather, being able to bet on a sports outcome, right? Yes, no, it's more the talk of the town right now.
As we just talked about earlier, betting on the weather is probably not a great idea. Hey, the whole thing sounds like it's powered by hype. So what are some legitimate alternative investments that actually, might make sense for retirees?
Well, I think the whole conversation kind of goes back to you never want to stick all of your eggs into one basket. Mm-hmm. I mean, nowadays the hype's behind, different precious metals, behind a whole bunch of other things. But AI is a big, I guess I call it a hit at this point. There's been a big bubble that's been blown up by the AI sector. And right. I think it's important that, a lot of people now are participating there, which is great. But, if you put all your money into one particular sector of the market, things might not work out too well. Real estate's something that's always been out there to where, it should always be appreciating. Well, that's true. But we're also kind of going back to, some illiquidity there. You've got a bunch of rentals, which I know Dad will tell you is there's a lot of people in this area that hang their hat on rental properties. Well, that's fine and good, but when are you going to be able to pick up your foundation of your house and take that down to the grocery store when you need to go buy your groceries?
Right.
So, there's a lot to do with that. So once again, I don't think everybody needs to stick all their money or all their eggs into one particular basket, but explore different options. It's not just your stocks. It's not just your bonds, but that's what most people think of is, hey, we're going to make money when the stock market's hot with stocks. And when things aren't going well, in the equity side, then the bonds are going to protect us. Well, guess what? That's not going to be the case. So once again, there's different opportunities out there. It's not just your normal stock and bond allocation, if you will.
Yeah, and I would say to most people that, meme stocks, it sounds exciting. It's sexy. Everybody wants to do something like that. But, your retirement money shouldn't be that exciting. Why is that? Because if you lost 25 to 50% of your retirement accounts, I don't think anybody would feel good about that. As quick as things rise, they can go down just as quick just because somebody said something stupid on social media or something and everybody hears about it and it just bottom drops out on you. So, one of the things that a lot of people need to understand, you need to have, speculation is not a strategy for you in retirement. Yes, if you want to speculate on a few things, take a little portion of your money, that's one thing. But to allow you to have somebody talk you into doing all gold or all silver or all AI stock, you need to have a strategy that's going to help you do what you want to do, not about what all the social media pundits and everything else is telling you to do. What is it that you want to try and accomplish? It's all about you. And, retirement, boring is beautiful when it comes to your investments. You need to have some money set aside to do those sexy things that you've been told about. But at the same time, you want to be able to sleep at night. You want to have peace of mind. And that's where you need to have a plan. And going through our roadmap process and what we recommend as fiduciaries is going to help you get that peace of mind and not have to worry about what happens if I do this and I lose everything. Are you going to be able to explain that to your wife or your husband because I just lost $200,000 because somebody told me to do this? I don't think so. What do you think?
Well, I can tell you right now, I've got two things to point out. One, we're going to make a T-shirt that says boring is beautiful.
Yep.
And then two, I forgot number two, but number one, the boring is beautiful was pretty good.
I've got a question for you, Tim. How did it feel hearing your dad say sexy as many times as he did? Was that the other one?
Made me a little uncomfortable, but that's okay.
That's fair. Here's the thing. Boring is beautiful for your investments. Yes, I do love that as a T-shirt. But when it comes to the investments being boring, look, the market's done really well pretty much for the past 16, 17 years. How much is enough? If the market does see a sharp pullback and you lose essentially a year or two of that, how is that going to affect your retirement quality? I dare say, dialing back on some of that risk, having a bit more of a conservative approach, not entirely, because there is money you're not going to touch for 15, 20 years. You can have that money out there growing and taking a couple of hits. I've heard it posed before as kind of like casino money. How much could you lose at the casino and still be able to go home to your spouse and be okay and not have the doors, the locks changed? It's the same sort of thing when it comes to these meme stocks or, these blue, like swinging for the fences, things like that. But finding that right blend is all part of the plan. If you want a little bit of play money to have in the market or whatever investments, the speculation, talk about that with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. They'll put that in, but that's certainly not going to be the entirety of your plan. But creating that plan, creating that roadmap as fiduciaries, as Ralph mentioned there, they're going to recommend what they believe will work in your best interest. It's your decision to make at the end of the day, but it all starts with that phone call, 804-635-3550. Again, it is a complimentary consultation, complimentary conversation, 804-635-3550, or going to the website at welcomehomefp.com. You threw out some numbers earlier, Tim, and it actually ties in here. People ask very often, how much do I need to save to retire? And the financial industry will give you different numbers. Maybe it is $1.2 million. Maybe it is $1.8 million. People listening, if you don't have that much saved, don't shut off the radio and say, oh, I can't afford to retire now. Gallup actually asked people that are already in retirement the same question. Only 12% of them said that they thought they needed that much. And just 4% had actually saved $1 million or more for retirement. 74% said they're actually living pretty comfortably in retirement. So having below that amount, but they're feeling pretty comfortable. So what is wrong here? Are we just victims of scare tactics?
Oh, I'm sure of that. But before we proceed, I remember what number 2 was.
Okay.
So number 2 is when you're talking about nothing ever said on social media was ever stupid. That's not the case. But once it kind of coming back to this is, everybody's in a different position, right? We all live in different places, right? We all have different things. We all have different number of kids. There's so many things that are included with this. And I know, I've said it before. One is we need to stop dealing in such negativity, right? Anybody who walks into our door, we're not going to tell them the exact same thing, right? Somebody might not be able to survive on $1.8 million. Some people might survive on $200,000. It's just dependent on, one, how well you've planned, but two, what your lifestyle looks like. So everybody's going to be different. But, I met with a lady in Petersburg that I'll never forget, and this has been some years now. I'll never forget when she came in and she was just beating herself up and halfway crying, and I haven't saved enough. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. Well, we built her the retirement roadmap. She's got 2 pensions. She's got Social Security, and her expenses were so low and her debt level was so low. I think her income was almost 3 times what her expenses were.
Oh, wow.
So in that case, and she didn't even have $200,000 saved up. So in that case, yes, would we like to have more than $200,000 saved up? Sure. But with your expenses and your income, your cash flow, you look pretty good. So I think everybody gets so focused on that big number, and we talk about it all the time, of people will whip out their statement and say, hey, here's my plan. Well, great. That's a great number, but how do we know it's going to work? Because if you have everything into the market and you're going to need a percentage of that a year, whether it's 4% rule or the Ramsey 8% rule or whatever it is, things might not work out the way that you want to. So everybody needs to shift off of that big number and figure out how that number can work for them when it comes to retirement and creating that paycheck.
And I would say most people, when it comes to trying to retire and plan, if they're smart enough to try to plan it, there's not everybody that's making good plans. They're just throwing caution to the wind and stepping aside and hope for the best. That's not a plan. That's a wish. So what I would say is they forget that, okay, listen, I don't have to spend this much money on gas going back and forth to work. I don't have to buy new suits or new work clothes or whatever it is since I'm not working anymore. Those are things that are naturally going to drop off the expenses. But, I think like Tim was talking about, you need to focus on the income, not that big pile of money. Yes, you're going to have that pile of money to reproduce your paycheck or whatever it is that you have a shortfall on. But guess what? It's more important to have an income plan in your retirement years than it is, I just want to accumulate more and more and more. Because if all you're doing is accumulating money, there's going to be a tax bomb coming to you at some point in your life in retirement. That's something you probably didn't want to deal with.
No, not at all. And, Tim, earlier you were talking about real estate and how you can't, use your foundation to pay for your groceries. Same sort of thing when it comes to your 401k statements. You can't go to the grocery store or to Home Depot or whatever and get what you want just by showing them your statement, maybe tearing off a corner of it. You need to have those retirement accounts turn into that retirement plan to turn into retirement income, because that is what matters at the end of the day. How much money are you bringing in? Hopefully from reliable sources that are going to be there consistently. Social Security is a factor, a pension if you've got the luxury of that. If you don't have that, or if that doesn't add up to what you need on a month-to-month basis, finding alternate means out there to provide that sustainable, reliable income is really what the planning process is all about, turning those accounts into that retirement plan, into that retirement income. The team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, they can help you with that, walk you through the process, and show you the different avenues, the different ways you could do it. Maybe there is a strategy you don't want to use. That is fine. Exploring the other options out there, but it all starts with setting up a time to speak with them. 804-635-3550. You can go to the website at welcomehomefp.com. In the 80s, there were two game-changing things in the world of communications. First of all, answering machines became common in homes. And of course, cell phones actually hit the market for the first time. So the question is, what did we do before then? Here is comedian Brad Upton.
People used to call us. We didn't know who it was. Remember the phone would ring? You would run to answer it. You pull your hamstring getting to the phone. Now you hear that thing ring, you go, whatever. And do you know why you would run to the phone? Listen to this. Because if you didn't get there were no answering machines. Look at you looking at me like, no way. And then you didn't know. You did not know. You'd stand like, who was that? And then, listen to this. You had to call all your friends on numbers that you stored in your head. All the old people in here, they know the number of the house they grew up in. Am I right? Yeah. Now do you know your spouse's number? No. Phones are smart. We're not.
Okay, so I'm going to put you guys to the test here. Do you know your spouse's phone number off the top of your head?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you to give it out, and we're not going to give them out on the air, but that is important, But we used to memorize everyone's phone number. I'd probably know 5 of them off the top of my head. We're not going to talk about those phone numbers. I'll talk about your phone number in a little bit, but what are the numbers that people should be memorizing if they're nearing retirement? Doesn't a well thought out retirement plan do the remembering for us?
It should, yeah. And I think, it is, I always say that smartphones have made us stupid. And I think
that's fair.
I think for maybe a lot of folks or a lot of aspects of life, it has, right? But the funny thing is, I know my wife's number. I actually know my dad's number, my mom's number, and my 2 older kids' numbers, but I don't know my youngest kid's number. But that's just because he hasn't had his number quite as long as
okay, that's fair.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm in a different boat, because I think there's a lot of people that might not know anybody's number at this point. And I do know my childhood home number too. Anyways, I'm done proving my memorization of my old phone number.
You passed, yeah.
Yeah. But, talking about the numbers, like we were talking about, having $1.8 million or whatever, what's really important is to know what your monthly income is going to look like, but also what your monthly expenses look like. That will tell you the same thing, is that there's so many people out there that aren't very realistic with what their spending habits look like. I know I've brought up the Amazonnesia thing before, where, you're spending so much on Amazon and you go out to the front porch and you forget what you had bought because you buy so many things. So, I think it's very important to know what's coming in. Where is it coming in from, right? Is it going to be Social Security? Are you fortunate enough to work so hard to have that pension, right? Are there are other multiple streams coming, whether it's rental, whether whatever, right? It's important to know where they're coming from, what the taxation looks like on them as well. Taxation is one of those things that still people think, hey, I hit 65, I no longer have to pay taxes. Well, only if that was the case, things would look okay. But if you've done proper tax strategies, maybe you could be in that camp. But that's what's very important. The numbers that is going to come in each month and what's going to go out each month. And yes, going out means taxes as well.
So I would say to people, they need to understand that retirement, your years in retirement, is about replacing that income that you've depended upon all these years. That's not going to change about your expenses. You need a place to be able to replace whatever it is that you were working for. The other thing I would say, another number that you ought to be looking at is, what is your emergency cushion? What does it need to be? It can be all over the board. Most people are 3 to 6 months of whatever your expenses are is a cushion. We got one person that decided that she needed a certain amount of money in there. And I asked her, well, what was that? And she says, $500,000 in the bank. And I'm like, what are you going to do in an emergency like that? I said, and by the way, why aren't you happy? She said, because I only have $496,000 in the bank. I'm like, you should be very proud of yourself to have that kind of money. But I think that's the biggest thing, that you need to know your numbers so you can retire with confidence. It's not about guesswork. It's not about, can I retire when I retire? It's, all right, I think I can do this based on these reasons. And when that math is clear, guess what? Stress goes down about whether you decide to retire today or next year or 5 years from now. It's all about you and your comfort level.
That is one of those expenditures that, again, when you're in the working world, you might take for granted. Same sort of thing, taxation, income coming in, all these things in the working world, very different from the retirement world. And, the show is called Aspire to Retire. And that is true. Everybody, I think, out there does aspire to retire at some point. But it's not just about that. It's about staying retired, making sure that, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. So, yes, there are a lot of numbers that you need to take into account in retirement. But here's the number you need to worry about right now. It's 804-635-3550. That is how you call the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners to begin creating and maintaining that retirement roadmap with them to get you to, through, and beyond retirement. 804-635-3550. Online at welcomehomefp.com. As we wrap up the show, we'd be remiss if we did not mention there is a football game happening later this evening. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. Super Bowl 60. It's all set. Seahawks going to face the Patriots. Most NFL players, they dedicate their careers to winning the big game. You talk about the greatest of all time and who they are and who's in the Hall of Fame. It's always how many rings do they have, right? Well, Hall of Famer Andre Reed is part of an elite group of Buffalo Bills who actually played in 4 straight Super Bowls in the early 90s. We know how that worked out for them. But we had the chance to actually speak with Andre Reed a couple years ago, and here's what he said.
As a kid, I always dreamed about playing in the Super Bowl. I think if you talk to any Pop Warner kid, he dreams about playing in the Super Bowl one day. And the spectacle of it 25, 35 years ago, it just keeps growing. It's media driven. So I just remember what I felt like stepping on that field, and you knew that millions of people were watching you around the world. And that's where I wanted to be. It was a phenomenal feeling, yeah. Besides the winning, we didn't win, but, that's part of losing too.
Now, I know that there are Buffalo Bills fans around the country, and they're very passionate, so I apologize for this. But despite the losses, those Super Bowl runs didn't happen by accident. The fact that they got there consistently, that doesn't happen that often. So they were planned. Do you find people tend to wing it more than they should when it comes to planning their retirement?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. And yeah, I mean, it's nice to make it to the big game. And yes, I don't want to upset the Bills Mafia, but yeah, it would have been nice to carry home a trophy at one of those 4. But yeah, I mean, it's very important to focus in on your plan and the preparation and test driving, right? And we've talked about this before too, is, when you take a look at the NFL, I mean, they have their walkthroughs right before the games. Test drive your retirement before you get into full retirement mode. So yeah, it is very important to not wing it, so to speak, but you have to be flexible. Like we had talked about before, is, the unexpected will happen. So you've got to make sure that you're able to pivot. And just because you called a passing play to Terry McLaurin, sorry, I'm bringing up my Redskins again, or Commanders. But, you can call the audible. We can make sure that, hey, this is what we're going to look like, but here's the market conditions, because now they're lined up in a 3-4 defense. We got to pivot, right? So I think it's important, to really focus in on the strategy of your retirement.
I would say anybody would probably agree with this statement. You just don't show up for a player on a Super Bowl game.
Right.
You sit there and you prepare all season. That's what people need to understand about your retirement. You need to plan for it. You need to be prepared for it. And how do you do that? Basically, you need some help, because most people have never retired before. They don't know what it's to expect. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, there's so many different ways of handling that. And if you've never done it before, you need to understand one thing, and that is, once you make that determination or that choice, guess what? You're not going to be able to make that change again for 99% of the time. So one of the things that we always talk to people about is, you've got to be able to understand how to prepare for it's coming to you, because once you make those choices, not many of them are going to be able to be changed. So, the goal is not about flashy plays either in your football game, Super Bowl, or whatever, or about life. It's about finishing the way that you want to go. Not every veteran has a Super Bowl trophy, but hopefully most of them are healthy, survive what they had to do, because I would say it's a lot tougher, a lot rougher to do their job than what most people listening to this broadcast is, or the attendees here. I don't think my life is as tough as those football players, and neither is Tim and Chris. I don't even think your job is that tough as they are.
Definitely not physically.
Yeah, less tackling for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just the thing. You got to figure out what your life is and what you want it to be and prepare for it, not guess.
And also understanding that despite as much preparation as you have, there are going to be challenges along the way, things that you maybe didn't account for. How do you adjust with that? How do you pivot and make sure that it doesn't derail you from the ultimate goal? Not my team by any means, but I did live in Atlanta the last time they were in the Super Bowl, and everyone knows 28-3. It seemed like a sure thing, unless you're from Atlanta, and then it's never out until the final whistle blows, and we know how that worked out. They did not adjust and adapt to the changes that the Patriots made later on in the season. Later on in the game. We don't want that for you guys out there. We want you to have a plan in place. And the thing with the retirement roadmap is if there are conditions on the way that do, change the outlook, that do get you off course, how to readjust, how to make those moves to keep you on the path. That is what it's all about. It's not a set it and forget it plan. It is not a thanks for coming in, we'll see you never. It is a conversation. It is a living, breathing document. And it all starts with picking up the phone and scheduling a time to speak with Ralph Short, with Tim Short, the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. 804-635-3550 is the phone number. Once again, 804-635-3550. You can also go to the website, find out about the team, find out about the upcoming events that they have going on. That is over there on the website, welcomehomefp.com. As always, want to thank you for joining us here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Hope you stay safe out there. Enjoy the game, or enjoy the commercials, or enjoy the snacks, whatever you're going to partake in this evening. Gentlemen, hope you guys have a great week as well. Enjoy the game. As we wrap up, going to leave you with the final word.
All right. Well, before the final word, who are we going for? Anybody?
I really don't have a dog in this fight.
Yeah, I don't either. I like Drake May, so I'm going for the Patriots,
Okay.
although my 16-year-old's mad at me for doing that. But anyway, so yeah, we want to thank everybody for listening. I think this, I know we talked a little bit Super Bowl and retirement, and there's a lot of correlations to it. Like Dad's saying is, it takes seasons upon seasons upon seasons to prepare, right? And while you're watching the game tonight, you can sit there and think about how much hard work they put into it, and it wasn't just yesterday, right? So when it comes down to retirement, these are things that we got to focus in on before we get there. So more years and sessions of planning, the better off we're going to be. So give us a call. We'd love to bring you into the office, and we can kind of start off that conversation. But once again, everybody, have a good time tonight. Don't eat and drink too much, and we will talk to you guys.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness, and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.